Hey everyone, today on the Gilbert.K show, we're joined by legendary cinematographer Nigel Bluck, the visual mastermind behind Lilo and Stitch, 2025, True Detective, and the Peanut Butter Falcon. From Middle-earth to modern-day Americana, he's captured it all. Let's welcome Nigel Bluck.
Hey Nigel, how are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks, Ed.
What first sparked your passion for cinematography growing up in New Zealand?
I have always been interested in film and cinema. Watched a lot of films as a kid. Was just generally into it. My father was very much into cinema and film. There's always like a film comment magazines lying around and conversation, and he introduced me to a lot of interesting stuff. So it's from there, really, just out of curiosity. Yeah, it was just, and my uncle actually was at that time, budding cinematographer, Richard Bluck. And I had a little glimpse here and there of going to visit him and seeing what he does a little bit, and thought, wow, this looks interesting. And that was the beginning of it, really. I went and studied in university in New Zealand for a Bachelor of Fine Arts and with an English major at the time. I began being interested in film there more because I was doing some film studies. Yeah. And one of the routes that I heard of was a film school that was part of the Fine Arts Film School in Christchurch, a different town that I lived in Canterbury in New Zealand. And you could get into there if you were studying for a BA and you made a film. So I made a film, short film. I wanted to be a director at that time. I didn't know much about what it all was, but I wanted to make films in some way. So I made a little film, which my uncle at the time shot, Richard Bluck. And that got me into the film school. So I then went to film school, which was part of this fine arts school, as I say, as a film major, and began studying film there, which was largely theoretical, largely fine art film, or based, and I just started shooting everyone's film. I was gravitated towards cinematography and started offering myself up to shoot other people's films, and that was my focus. So I went to the school and said, how can you help me with this? And they were like, we're not a cinematography school. Which was honest, and at the time, and they were like, well, you need to just go and join the industry, because at the time in New Zealand, that's what you did. You joined the industry, you became a clapper loader, you worked your way up through the ranks. That was the only way forward. I did as much and left, moved again to Wellington, the center of the film industry at that point in New Zealand, and did the things you do. Went to Panavision and learned to load magazines, and went and loaded and worked as an assistant for a few years. But all the time I was doing that, I was trying to cultivate being a DP and shooting little things here and there, whatever I could. Started getting more of an appetite for that, and then discovered the Australian Film, Television and Radio School in Australia, which was the only school in Australasia anyway that had a cinematography specific stream. So I applied to that and managed to get into that, moved to Sydney, studied that, studied for a couple of years there, and went back to New Zealand, and started a very small production company with my now wife, then partner at the time, and another friend. We bought a 16mm camera, started shooting corporate stuff, whatever we could get our hands on, and it just went from there. I started shooting commercials and built on commercials, shot my first film very early on when I was very young, for Hamish Rothwell, who was a guy who was shooting a lot of commercials with at the time in New Zealand. And that was Stickmen, and then got an opportunity on Lord of the Rings as one of the DPs shooting a visual effects unit, and it sort of went from there, basically.
Involved, yeah. That's great. What was the first film you shot? What was the first film you shot?
The first film I shot was a
So what lessons did you? So you shot your first feature at 26. What lessons did you take away from making Stickman?
Well, I remember it as the most tiring thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But it was very satisfying in that way. It was just like drawing on all these things you know a little bit about, and some things you know nothing about, and trying to make sense of them. The main lessons I learned. Well, I think it's the first time I've ever pre-produced a film, and learning about pre-production and what that actually is, and what you need to do and what you need to achieve to be prepared. Everyone's got different versions of that, and I'm still learning about that every day. But that was one of the main things. I sort of didn't quite know how to pre-produce it. I felt very prepared, but I think in retrospect, it would have been I would have known what to focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the main thing. I'm pretty happy with that film. It was an interesting process. We were very brave at the time with some of the processes we were using, so we didn't choose the easy route. But it was rewarding, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then you landed the role of second unit DP on The Lord of the Rings. What was like shooting on such a legendary production early on?
It wasn't the second unit. There were many units on Lord of the Rings. I was the visual effects DP of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're different things. I just want to make sure that's clear. Yeah. What was the question about that? Sorry.
No. What was like being on a legendary production in your career?
It was very intimidating on one level, but then a little bit familiar because I knew all the people who were the locals, who were the technicians, so I felt relatively comfortable there. I'd never really done anything of scale and blue screen. I mean, I knew my way around it because I'd done a bunch of commercials and understood it. But it was great working with a real visual effects supervisor and being chaperoned through that, if you will. I met Andrew Lesney. He came to the premiere of the film I'd shot, and he liked what he saw, and he said, "Listen, I want someone who's not a visual effects DP to photograph this for me," and I thought that was really interesting. So I trusted him and lent on him a lot, and asked him a lot of questions, and bless him, I miss him very much, and he was a huge influence on me in many ways. Still one of the smartest cameramen I've ever come across.
So fast forward to HBO's True Detective. What was your approach to creating the show's haunting visual language in season 2?
Well, the trouble with television is doing a season 2 is that the audience just really wants more of season 1. That's unfortunately just a quirk of humankind, and something that I think showrunners are trying to change all the time, but it just doesn't really work. But I wasn't really aware of that at the time. It was like, as far as we were concerned as filmmakers on the show, we were like, okay, this is a new world, or new worlds, this is a new film, we have a completely different direction. So there was no trying to emulate the first season. The first season was shot in film. There was a lot of discussion about, okay, we cannot shoot on film this time for whatever reasons, mandated by whomever. So what can you bring to this? How can you bring the digital image so it's not too far away from this filmic world that we had, but it's still got its identity? So my solution at the time was to shoot anamorphic, which hasn't been done a lot in television, mainly because of the ratio problems. Anamorphic is a 2:3:5 ratio, and center punching that ratio didn't make a lot of sense at the time because of resolution problems.
Can you explain to the audience what's anamorphic?
Anamorphic is a way of shooting which uses a specialized lens, which squeezes the image into the camera and then de-squeezes the image either optically or digitally, depending if you're projecting or watching it on a device. It's a way of maximizing the negative, putting as much information as you can into a space, and then packaging it in that way, and then So it's the lenses are doing a lot more than they would on a spherical lens. A spherical lens shoots an image as you see it. It's all very proportioned correctly, and it's mathematically correct, and it's wonderful. Anamorphic is a far more sophisticated tool in a way. It's a more sophisticated piece of optics. It has a certain amount of drawbacks, a certain amount of positives. Yeah, it's an interesting lens.
Yeah.
The main thing that I was using it for is it has an optical quality to it, which spherical doesn't have as much. It softens the image somewhat, which at the time with the digital cameras we were shooting on, I really wanted because it was too sharp for me. I didn't want to do that using filtration or too much smoke. So it was an interesting solution, and I just like the look of Anamorphic. I like what it does with the actors. I like the close-ups. I like the ratio. Now we were shooting 16:9 because it's for television, so we weren't shooting at 3:5. So we were cropping into the middle of it. So there was a lot of discussion about why do you want to do it this way. Anyway, that was one of the first shows shot in Anamorphic, and it was great. I'm very happy with it. I'm very proud of the show. I think you need to look at the show as a separate world, a separate show from the first show or the following show. And it has a whole different sort of merit, I think. So yeah, it was very interesting. I love shooting. I was very privileged to shooting in LA for 8 months, and it's a landscape, especially that landscape, which I found very interesting. The world of Vinci, the sort of hidden gems of LA, the hidden worlds of LA, how it moves, how it functions, what the soul of it is. Aerial explorations of that I found interesting. The macro and the micro of what was going on. I really enjoyed the process. It was, I got to know Nick Pizzolatto quite well, who's the showrunner. I learned all about the politics of who you're serving as a DP on a show like that, whether it be the showrunner or the director or both, or how the politics of that work, and it's very tricky. But I think it's an interesting show. I think it's visually interesting. I was trying to make something that was timeless, even though it was very much set in a time period. Now, well, then now, and I was trying to make something that was simplistic, didn't draw attention to itself with the camera. It was all about showing these locations and these places as they were, and then injecting some sort of mystery or mysticness or mysticism to them where it needed to.
So how do you balance, like, how do you make sure that you have your signature on cinematography, but at the same time you want to make sure the director, like, because it's collaborative, right, the work, but at the same time you have your vision too, right? How do you balance that? What do you do to balance that?
Well, it's an ongoing conversation. It's always different depending on who you're working with. Sometimes you're working with a director who is very visually clear, knows exactly what they want, and is in a position to be powerful in ascertaining that, and therefore would be able to be up with the producers and say, this is what we're doing, this is what the image is, you find me this location, go and do that. At that point, it's really exciting because you're working with someone who's got very absolute clarity about what they need, and you're working with an image that's already very well formed somewhere. So it becomes a process of refining, and that's lovely, or tuning, and it's just getting that just right. And sometimes it's completely different, and it's a ground up thing visually, and the director is really a writer, and or maybe finding their feet as a director, and they can talk to you all day long about what the script is, what needs to happen emotionally in the scene, but they can't really convey to you exactly what it is visually. Totally different approach, just as exciting as a DP because you're building it from the ground up.
That's true.
I like both. As a DP, you get to craft the higher level of it. I think a lot when you're working with someone who's already got an image in their head, because you're refining something, you're already halfway down the line.
Yeah.
But then sometimes if you're starting from the ground up as well with someone who's more of a writer, it's very exciting to be managing that image a lot more from my quarters, you know. So different every time. And I think being a DP and having been a DP for a while, I'm learning always, and just need to start the project with a blank slate every time and figure out where you're at. What is the language? Ask the right questions. Educate yourself in the world that the director or the writer has created. Have so you can have a worthwhile opinion about what direction we should go with this. Really understand the director and their vision before you start applying potential formulas for how this is going to be. I think if you go in too early, you're trying to retrofit the script or the ideas to a visual style, and that's completely the wrong way around. So just through lots of experimentation over the years, I'm finding my way, and it's always different, as I say, but there are roadmaps to this. I think it's like things like that, is letting the script speak first, letting the director speak first, understanding, trying to get to the bottom of what the director sees, and then just knowing how to discuss these things, how to talk to a director about visual worlds, and how to have opinions about visual worlds and filmmaking and what works and what doesn't work. But always being open-minded as well, you know, because I think, well, for me anyway, in cinema, when I'm surprised by something, I'm most interested. When a genre defies you by turning a corner into another genre, or elevates or de-elevates or takes a turn that you weren't expecting, that's what I'm living for. I mean, I rewatch a lot of movies, but, you know, I get bored when it's like, I can tell what's going to happen next and what the next approach will be. More importantly, it's like, okay, they're going to do this next. And it's like, okay. So wherever we can find ways to keep the audience fresh, interested, surprised by the visual approach, I think is a great thing, without deterring from the story or without drawing attention to the work of my work, which is very important. So that's the fine line, you know, how to be silent, how to not exist, but still make a beautiful, correct visual rendition of the film, the story, the vision.
That's great. Before we move on to the next segment, we're going to play a game called This or That. And it's a rapid fire game where you choose between two fun options. Are you ready, Nigel? Okay. Film or digital?
Film.
Natural light or studio lighting?
Natural light.
Wide shot or close-up?
Wide shot.
Indie film or studio blockbuster?
Difficult question. Both.
Blue hour or golden hour?
Golden hour.
On location or soundstage?
Location.
Classic framing or experimental angles?
Classical frame.
Gritty realism or stylized fantasy?
Gritty realism.
Steadicam or handheld? And shoot in New Zealand or LA?
New Zealand.
That's great. So let's talk about your upcoming work on Lilo and Stitch 2025. How do you reimagine such a beloved animated world in live action? What was your biggest visual challenge for you?
I think the biggest visual challenge was, you know, when you're working with a property or a world that already exists so strongly, that people know so well, that have watched so much, who you have to be very careful how you change it or adjust it, so you don't offend anyone, and so you don't spoil all that stuff that that journey they've already come through to this point. So there was that, in terms of looking at the original work and going, okay, well, it has to live somewhere in here. And then there was a sense very much between Dean and I of trying to bring a reality to it. It's a Disney movie, it's a kids movie, it's in Hawaii. By nature, it's sunny and all those things. But it's also a story about a little girl who doesn't have a lot of money, who's very much an islander, who identifies with that, and the people around her identify with that. So how to communicate a feeling of something that was local, that had a real local flavor to it, that felt like it was made in Hawaii, around Hawaiians, which it was, on location as much as possible, and just creating a world that was, I hate to reuse this word organic, but that felt natural, organic, true somehow. So I was looking for truth in the light, looking for truth in the locations, looking to, even though it was a far out science fiction premise, to ground it as much as possible. So when this little alien came into the world, it kind of had this amazing contrast to it. So that was the kernel of it. And then it's how to bring Stitch into this reality and give him a believable existence there, along with the other aliens. So that was the challenge, you know. And look, I think that Disney had a slightly different vision of that, and there was a lot of sort of melding in between. And, you know, I think they wanted something that was a little more obviously bright and sunny. But I think we both felt that the film had a lot of ups and downs in its story, and we wanted to be more three-dimensional than that. So yeah, that was the basics of it, really.
That's great. You worked on Americana with Tony Tost, a gritty, stylized Western. How did you approach shooting this genre differently, and what visual language did you want to bring to life?
We were referencing a lot of very classical 70s films. And that was very much the world that we wanted to create, something that felt very timeless, even though we're shooting it in the now, and the film takes place in the now. So we were looking for very classical kind of framing, use of zooms, just staying true to that language of the 70s, the lower budget 70s indie movie. That's something that's a world I really like and enjoy, and so it became a very simplistic image, simplistic coverage, just thinking very carefully about where we're putting the camera and why, and how it's going to sustain for as long as possible through a scene, and just making something, I guess, classically American, you know, American independent cinema from the 70s, you know, 2-lane blacktop, 5 easy pieces, a lot of films from that era. That was the basics of it.
Yeah. Okay, great. In Easy Waltz with Nick Pozzallato, how did you and Nick build a visual tone that reflected the story's complexity? Did working with him again after True Detective allow for a unique shorthand or collaboration style?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I think I know Nick relatively well in terms of what he likes and what he doesn't like, how he likes to tell a story, how he likes to work with the actors, the freedom to give them, and what he wants to focus on, what he wants to just glaze over. I think I understand pretty well from Nick. And in this case, it was a lot about, you're working with Al Pacino and Vince Vaughn. That they both bring a certain way to the film set that you need to sort of work around. And we're trying to accommodate that. Working with Vince in the live performance part of it, trying to make him belong to that stage and that career where, he's doing his job as an actor, of course, but he's not a singer by nature. And I think he worked hard and to find that place, and we were trying to work hard with the camera as well to put him in that place, or let that reality exist as a whole rather than just choosing little pieces out of it. The actor performer can be there with the band and in some level of reality. And then it was, looking for a Vegas that is perhaps not the Vegas we all know, that is that has got a crust on the top and then a layer underneath it, and trying to find a way to photograph that. Those were the main things. And Nick's all about efficiency and about he knows exactly what he wants out of a performance or a scene, and therefore performance, before he goes into it. He's seeking that already, and he can verbalize that to me. So he knows exactly. So coverage wise, it's like, all right, you need to get to this part. So it's about constructing a roadmap early on, rather than just covering a scene and then discovering it in the edit. It's very much like,
you plan it. So do you storyboard, or it depends on the project?
There's a few things we storyboarded with Nick, but not on a lot. For me, it's different every time. It's such an interesting process. I did a lot of storyboarding in the last movie I made, Anaconda. A lot of storyboards. A lot of them we didn't use. The process changes every time. Sometimes it's like creating a Bible, which you're going to obey. And sometimes it's a process of visualizing. As part of the process that you then do and then throw away and start again. And I think both are just as valid as each other. The latter's more frustrating than the other one a little bit sometimes for some people, like the storyboard artist. But you got to realize that it's very, as a DP or as a director or as a team, it's invaluable to go, okay, what does it actually look like? And sit down and visualize that. Sometimes you can just do that verbally, depending on the abilities of the director. Sometimes you need a third party to draw and go, it's like this, right? Or no. So I have a love-hate relationship with it. I can take it either way. And it's a lot to do with scale as well. Especially working now on larger scale projects, you just need to share this idea and this vision and this conversation with more people than you can fit into a room usually.
That's true.
So that's where they're invaluable. It's like people need to know what the frame is 6 weeks before we even think about shooting it. So that's what storyboards are about. But they're always a starting point, I say, and I think the worst thing you can do to a DP or an artist of any sort is to say, just make it look like this. Exactly. What just happened? At that point, what are we doing? It's communication. It's about communicating clarity, efficiency, and not being too precious about it. If someone has a better idea, then be humble about that, and have the talent to recognize it and the humility to take it on board and run with it if it's better.
That's great. So let's jump back to the peanut butter Falcon. The naturalistic look was so rich and emotional. How did you achieve that magic using mostly natural light and handheld camera work?
I'm really comfortable in that environment. I feel really good and energized. in a natural environment with some actors, some non-actors, a bit of a voyage of discovery, and having a great story behind you, a great foundation. I feel great in that, and that was the experience on that film. It was exciting. You've got Shia LaBeouf, who's like lightning in a bottle, and some of the non-actors and actors around him who are great in all sorts of other ways. And every day was an invention. How did I come to that point? There was a mixture of things. I think I was very aware that I wasn't going to do a lot of lighting or be able to do a lot of lighting, but still needed some sort of level of control. So I had to design the coverage around that a little bit. I've gone on to that in other podcasts, so I won't repeat myself, but I also really wanted to, I didn't want it to just feel like a loose collection of things. I wanted it to have a sense of classicism to it and elegance. And so I was looking for very elegant classical framing through all that. And that's again why I chose anamorphic, which sort of lends itself to that world. I really wanted a lot of it to be handheld and energetic, but I needed that to exist and have power when we were using it. So being careful to not overuse it. And when you pull out that trick, it actually has some resonance. And then working with two filmmakers who were pretty young at the time, and just trying to work with them about what their version of it as well is as well. That's an instance where they had storyboarded the whole film. Or I became part of the film, and we didn't stick to those much at all. But so it works differently every time.
That's true. Okay, and how did you balance action and comedy while shooting the unbearable weight of massive talent, especially in scenes where Nick Cage literally plays opposite himself?
That's a film which defies genre, I think, really. So it was playing into classical action, and comedy, and trying to bridge those two, which without it being too broad is what was the aim. So still feel like it was beautiful and elegant and elevated somewhat. So that was the aim there, in terms of integrating the action and the jokes, as it were, which Tom and I have continued to do on our next project, Anaconda. In terms of the twinning of it and Nick scenes, that was very interesting. We did a lot of research. There was, at that time, there was quite a lot of stuff around of twinning characters, and everyone had different ways of doing it. And I think what we found is just the simple ways were the best, and just the bare simplicity of having two Nicks in one frame was always the better. You could do all sorts of tricky cuts and move the camera around these people as they go through this world, and it was it was a bit buff, it was it didn't resonate as much as just two Nicks in a frame interacting. So and that is the simplest way to do it technically as well, obviously. So it was interesting with going all the way around with all the different methods, and then figure but it's also that's what that film needed. It's comedy. Sometimes just a simple frame with two people telling jokes is what you need to get the jokes and get it shot and let the actors improvise and have a feeling of freedom with it, to get the comedy. So it was an amalgam of a lot of things. We're also working in Budapest, and those filmmakers are very good at that sort of very serious action movie business. So it's kind of like, well, when in Rome, let's let them run with that, and you get that. What is a car chase made in that city, which there's been 150 of those car chases filmed in the last 10 years in that city by those people. So it's kind of hard to break that mold, you know. But and for our film, I think it was okay because that's what we needed out of those moments.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
Yeah.
So you've also done additional photography on blockbusters like the Deadpool and Assassin's Creed. How do you adapt your stuff to these kinds of mega productions when stepping into already established look?
Well, that's about finding out what the author, the original DP and director wanted to do with it and what their intentions were. Trying to get a good roadmap of that before you start so that you can create something that's continuous. And that's the same thing I ask of DPs when they finish films for me. Or do second unit with me. And, you know, from a first-hand experience, it's very clear when those people can ask the right questions and have the right attitude to it and when they don't, you know. So I try to be the person who asks the right questions, and so, you know, try and study the work, try and listen to the director, try and talk as much with the DP as you can, and listen to the crew if you get the privilege of using the same crew, and try and make something seamless. You know, it's a great exercise as well as a DP to be completely egoless, and it's like not to question the choices that have been made and to continue with them and to try and see the good in them and how to make them and grow and be even better versions of them in some shoots, you know, trying to give as much as possible. So I find I find it a really good exercise. I love meeting new directors. You're lucky to drop into these projects that sometimes take 6 months to shoot and just be there for a month or so and have all the same toys and same scale.
Okay. Before we move on to our final segment, let's play a game called the True or False. And it's the ultimate memory test where you must decide if each statement about your career is fact or fiction. Everybody's thinking
I've turned the phone off and it's still going, so I don't understand.
That's funny. Okay, let's do it. You got your first major job as a VFX on the Fellowship of the Ring. True or false? True. You shot.
The first job was the question?
Yeah. Is it? You got your first major job.
Okay. True. Yeah.
True. You shot True Detective season 2 using only natural light.
False.
You never storyboard your scenes.
False.
You prefer shooting on location to studio work.
True.
Lilo and Stitch 2025 was your first working with extensive VFX and creature integration.
False.
Yeah. You once had to shoot a scene from a canoe in the swampy water for the peanut butter Falcon. You've turned down scripts purely because the story didn't speak to you visually.
True.
You secretly want to shoot a musical.
False.
You think cinematography should always shoot their own second unit.
False.
And you believe the best camera in the world can save a bad story. Okay, let's move on to our final segment. So what's the biggest misconception about being a cinematographer that you'd love to set straight?
Oh, that's a tricky one. That it's easy.
Okay. Good point. Where do you see the future of cinematography going, especially with the rise of LED volumes, AI, and virtual productions? Are you excited or cautious?
Cautious.
Looking back, what's the one project or moment you're most proud of, and what would be your dream genre or director to work with next?
Most proud of, I'm very proud of a film I shot in Iran called Half Moon. Very proud of Peanut Butter Falcon. Very proud of a lot of things I've done. Very proud of a short film I did with my sister. So there's a lot of things I'm proud of. I try to, that's my gauge. If I'm proud of it, then it's worthwhile. So I try and ask myself at the beginning of the film, will I be proud of this? Can I be proud of this? So that's the goal.
Yeah.
I'd love to do some science fiction.
Okay, great. And and finally, what advice would you give to an upcoming cinematographer trying to break into industry today?
Shoot as much as you possibly can of as many different things as you can to find your way of and find your voice and discover it, because discovery is really fun and it's the best part of the job. So sitting around and thinking about it, you're not going to discover it. You need to apply it. And I think in this day and age, more than any other day and age, you have every opportunity to do that. On the scale is unimportant. The story is important. The intellectual consideration of the method of how you're going to apply it is very important. And most of those things can be applied in a macro or a micro way. So you don't need all the lights in the world, or the story, or the thing, and to do that. So yeah, just shoot as much as possible, or as many different styles of things as possible.
That's great. Sadly, we're coming to the end of the show. That's all, folks. Nigel Bluck, everyone. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.